You're watching Election 2019, live from the studios of RMIT Melbourne, presented by The Junction.
Welcome back. You're watching Election 2019 presented by The Junction, coming to you live from the RMIT studios in Melbourne. We're going out live on Channel 31 here in Melbourne, Channel 44 in Adelaide, WTV in Perth, Facebook Live and community radio stations across the nation. Now I bet you're glad you stayed with us because we'll be McCrossin live to our reporter River McCrossin, who's camped out at the Liberal headquarters in Gilmore, New South Wales. River, what's the latest?
Well, so far, not much has happened, really. We've had a few people trickle in, mostly media, to be honest. It's 7 p.m. Warren Mundine is expected to arrive. So until then, in the next 10, 15, 20 minutes, we could see some more people start to trickle in.
River, what's the feel like in the room there?
Well, so far, there's a kind of reluctance to say how this might go, but it's early days. The votings have only just closed. And as the night progresses, we could see that mood change.
Now, River, you've been down at the booths in Gilmore speaking to people. What have you been picking up?
That's right. We've been down since about 9 a.m. in the morning, early days, and the issues on people's minds, climate change, jobs, and the cost of living, especially for retirees, because Gilmore has a growing retiree or aged population.
Thanks for that, River. It's been great talking to you.
And now we're going to take things back a little closer to home, so to speak, with Sarah Mead out in Chisholm here in Victoria. Now, Sarah, why have the candidates from the two major parties been using WeChat so much this election campaign?
Hi there. So almost 20% of the people here in Chisholm have Chinese ancestry. So it makes it easier for politicians and the parties to use WeChat as a platform to get across their audience. Now, WeChat has over 2 million users across Australia and it is widely used amongst the Asian population.
So Sarah, 5 of the 9 candidates in Chisholm are women. This includes both the Labor and Liberal Party candidates. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, so in the history, we've seen Chisholm being ruled by female politicians the most for decades now. And the fact that 5 out of 9 candidates are female, it makes it look like a strong possibility that a female will win the seats as well.
So Sarah, Deakin University's Birdwood campus sits in this electorate. What do students think are the most important issues facing Chisholm?
So younger students believe in climate change and environmental health, looking after the environment, as well as mental health, whereas young people like 25, 24, they're looking more into work-related issues. So taxes is one of their concerns.
Fantastic stuff there, Sarah. Thank you very much for joining us. You know, there's an interesting point about Chisholm, is that the former MP Julia Banks has actually retired from the Liberal government and gone independent, running against Greg Hunt for Flinders. What do you think is the significance of this, Mary?
I think this is very significant. Julia Banks was the only Liberal to win a seat in 2016 against the Labor Party. So she's seen as a bit of a hero in the Liberal Party, but she was very wounded during the internal battle to remove Malcolm Turnbull as Prime Minister. She alleged bullying within the caucus, within the party, and she decided that the party had changed so much in that short time that she would run as an independent. She would vacate Chisholm and she would take on Greg Hunt, Minister in the Morrison government, down in the seat of Flinders. So this is very significant for that seat. There's also been news that the Labor Party has claimed dirty tricks in Chisholm. So they've taken an injunction out with the Australian Electoral Commission complaining that there has been rorts in some of the information written in Mandarin by the Liberal Party trying to influence that very high Chinese vote, as we heard from our reporter there. So that's going to be a great seat to watch.
Sorry, I'm just...
I think it's going to be a really interesting seat, Ari. It's going to be important. Julia Banks is a great warrior. She could well unseat Greg Hunt, and Labor thinks that they can hold Chisholm.
So what does the political future look like for Greg Hunt if he is unseated tonight?
Well, it'd be the end of a political dynasty, actually. His father was a very significant minister in the state government. He was one of my predecessors as planning minister here in the state of Victoria. He was much admired, a very successful moderate Liberal. And of course, there are those people who think that in the Liberal Party they're pushing the moderates out, and more extreme right-wingers seem to be in control of the present Liberal Party. That's the view from some Liberal members. I think it would be a shame to lose the Hunt family from politics, but he certainly backed Dutton in that leadership coup which saw Morrison come up through the middle. So he was damaged in that in many people's eyes.
Thanks for that, Mary. Now we're going to take a quick look into the preferential voting system, thanks to our friends at the University of Melbourne.
Preference voting can be a pretty tricky thing. That's why I've come down to the Melbourne Exhibition Centre here in South Bank to ask early voters how much they really understand about the ballots they just cast. Do you understand anything about preference voting?
Not a huge deal at all.
Don't know much about it, but from the limited knowledge I gained in the last 6 months, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I'm guessing here. I haven't really looked it up.
It's obviously a decision that we've made as a community that we want to make it complicated.
So, how does it work? To help visualize things, I went out to Woolies and bought 2 kilos of M&Ms. So let's take an imaginary seat in the House of Representatives and look at some first count votes. Labor is red, blue is for the Libs, the Greens are, well, green, the National Party is represented by the yellow M&Ms, and One Nation, they're the brown M&Ms. They'll hate that. After counting first preferences, Labor's in the lead with 35% of the vote. But because an absolute majority of 50% is needed, they haven't won yet. So we take the party with the fewest first preference votes and look at all the second preferences on their ballots. In this case, let's say One Nation splits that between the Libs and the Nationals. Then we redistribute. Still no 50%? That culling and recounting keeps going until one party is able to form an absolute majority and takes the seat. So what's the point? I asked Dr. Clayton Chin at the University of Melbourne to help me out.
The advantage of preference voting is the idea that it doesn't only ask a simple question of who you prefer the most, but what your relative feelings, or what your rank is amongst all the other existing parties. So it captures a much more nuanced sense of what an individual voter actually thinks. And that is thought to be, in at least on some accounts, more democratic.
A more informed voter is a better voter, and knowing where your vote goes and how it's counted is an important step to achieving that. Imran Arif, Melbourne, election 2019.
Well, that's very interesting insight. Next, we've got our reporter Jacinta Neal out in the New South Wales electorate of Reid. Jacinta, how's it going?
I'm going great tonight, thanks. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. Now, Jacinta, Fiona Martin joined the campaign very late in comparison to Crosby. Do you think that this will affect the margin at all?
I think it will have an effect on the margin. Sam Crosby has been campaigning in Reid for over a year versus Fiona Martin, who only joined the campaign last month. So I think that people are more familiar with Crosby than they are with Martin in the area. So I definitely think that it could have an effect on the seats tonight.
Now, Banks and Reid both need to be won by Labor in order for Shorten to become Prime Minister. Do you think there's a chance there?
I definitely think that Shorten has a chance in this seat. This seat has attracted hot attention from both Liberal and Labor. Visits from former PMs Rudd and Howard, visits from Bill Shorten and Scott Morrison. I think that Scott Morrison and Bill Shorten are fighting really hard, and I think Shorten might have a chance tonight.
Jacinta, I understand that the economy is a major issue in this election, with over 26,500 small businesses up and running in Reid. Do you think this sentiment plays a major role with the voting?
I definitely think that this sentiment plays a major role. Fiona Martin has been backing the economy really strongly in Reid. She announced last week that she would be putting $3.6 million to women in business. She's a business owner herself, being a child psychologist. I think that people definitely identify with her small business values. I think that people definitely might be swung Liberal because of that small business emphasis.
Thanks for that, Jacinta. We're going to take a quick break now, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Jesse Burns in the green room.
This is Election 2019, live from the studios of RMIT Melbourne, presented by The Junction.